As we go on with Fielder's contingency theory, in particular the least preferred coworker scale, the LPC, I want to remind you that the scores that the leader receives on his or her performance during in whatever endeavor they're at, whether it's a project or making disciples or leading another church uh, uh, program, is really awarded to them in a way that the followers, the superiors, and their associates see their effective or ineffective activities. In this chart, the least preferred coworker scale, the leader will receive an opinion from each of the individuals that are being led as either seeing him or her as in a favorable position or a less favorable position. And what Fielder has done here, he talked about three key components, and one is the leader-subordinate relationship. The other is the power position that that particular leader has within the organization, and then also the type of work or tasks that are being requested to be performed. In our particular endeavor, we're talking about being disciples, making disciples. So certainly there are all kinds of different types of tasks in service to our God. But Fielder has grouped these particular uh, leader relationship, power, and task structure components into eight possible different styles that the leader can expect to perform in. And as an example, Fielder expects that on a very favorable endeavor, the leader has a good relationship or a high relationship. And we're going to relate this back to the situational leadership model, where we have a high and a low continuum of relationships on the four quadrants that we've been studying. So, based upon Fielder's observations, he thinks that a favorable condition is certainly going to be enhanced by having a good relationship with the followers. And in addition to that, the position of authority that that particular person has within the organization, or the type of influence that person has on the individuals that they're leading, becomes another key component of being able to be in a favorable position. And then finally, the task structure that we're talking about here, or the ability to perform a particular function or process or task within guidelines. Fielder has said that a low LPC leader score, meaning that that particular person is pretty much task oriented. Now, I can attest to this. Most of the projects that I've were involved in the secular world, I had a good relationship with the people on my teams. I had a position of authority that gave me the right to demand or to ask or to insist upon performance. And I also frankly, I was a slave to project plans for over decades. So I had laid out the task structure very clearly. And so, as a task oriented person, I worked very well within this environment. However, I will tell you that there are times that the task structure was not quite so defined, if you will, or it was being defined as we went along. And we found out that in a medium component here, that I still needed to have some type of relationship with the individuals I was trying to lead. I may or may not have had a position of power. This would have been more like in a matrix organization, or the task structure was being defined as we went along. Now, the idea behind this, and this is what I want to kind of make sure you understand here, is that in a medium component where the position of power is flexible, the relationship is flexible, and the structure of what's being done is also flexible, then a person that is a high LPC leader, meaning that they're people oriented, is in fact a must, or a added benefit, if you will, of being able to control the idea of where you were going to go and develop relationships along the way. Now, the least unfavorable position that Fielder looks at is a poor relationship, a poor, low position of power, and very inflexible task structures. Now, what I would expect here, that no one would want to touch a particular relationship or a project endeavor like this, but I will tell you, during times of emergency, particularly when the fire department or the police or the National Guard or any of those things, this is the realm that they work in. Rarely do they have a good relationship with the people they're trying to help. Their position of power, it may or may not be looked upon as legitimate, and the task structure sometimes is so dynamic that it's difficult to get your hands around. So there are situations where the leaders that are doing a unfavorable project or an unfavorable situation may in fact have a poor relationship, no position of power, and low task structure. And oftentimes this is a like an emergency or something like that. So, but I want to remind you again, the four effective and four ineffective styles are, in essence, how inappropriate a leader's behavior is to a given situation, seen by, I can't overemphasize this, seen by his or her followers, superiors, or associates. In this next slide, we're going to go ahead and start trying to build the fundamentals of this thing that we've been talking about on a tri-dimensional leadership effectiveness model. Now, Fielder has, I want to remind you again, the three components that we're going to be looking at along the way here is structure, power, and relationship. Structure may be refined or redefined to understanding the path forward, or understanding from where I am to where I need to go. Certainly the power and relationships are pretty much self-defining. So Fielder gave us a little chart in the book on his situational leadership model, or his theory of leadership effectiveness, and he talks about high task, low relationships, high tasks and high relationships, high relationships and low task, and low relationships and low task, and this is all built around structure, power, and relationship. Now, you might have seen these particular basic styles once before. Here we have a four-quadrant situational leadership model that we've been discussing at least in 2 or 3 different applications, one being the four-chair model and the other one is the discipleship model, that we overlaid the maturation of the individuals as well as their ability or their willingness to serve. So those are the 4 things that we see here. And here again, you can see we have a high task, low relationship down in the lower right hand corner. We have a high task and high relationship in the upper right hand quadrant. You'll see a high relationship and low task on the upper left hand corner. And then you'll see a low relationship, low task on the lower left hand. Now this should be, by this time, pretty familiar to you. Now, looking at these, this is the situational leadership relationship task quadrant that we talked about, and let's talk about the entry points that we've been using all along, and this would be the lower right-hand quadrant. This is where the least experience is in the individuals being led are, as well as the most talented people in order to bring them into this situation. So you're going to have a high task. Whoever is leading the particular group in this group needs to be task oriented and be able to explain that, but also understand that they're developing a relationship. It's not a high relationship at this point in time. Now, according to the surveys or the data that Fred Fielder has gathered together, the opinions or the reactions of the people being led, their associates or their superiors, and observations seen that in a high task and low relationship, the effectiveness style would be seen as having well-defined methods of accomplishing goals that are helpful to the follower. It's when we bring people into the church to introduce them to Jesus Christ, we would hope to be where our methods and on accomplishing how it is we start them is well defined, and that they are helpful to the followers. As we go to the right, ineffective areas in this area might seem to be as imposing methods on others, sometimes seen as an unpleasant interest and a person interested in only short run output. Now, this may be where there is a emergency or a catastrophe that people have to work and are not necessarily willing and or have the skill set to perform okay in this low relationship high task. But the people coming in there are seeing as this as an imposing method. This has come some insight, incidentally, when we greet people and bring them into our church on how it is that we address the idea of them being sinners and that they need to have Jesus Christ in relationship with them for the forgiveness of their sin. As we look at the next quadrant in the situational leadership model, it goes into the high relationship, high task, and in an effective way, it's the people that are being led in this particular quadrant seen as satisfying the needs of the group or setting goals and organizing the work. Now, this smacks of a small group environment, if you will, but it also provides high levels of socio-emotional support, meaning that we have more than just a casual relationship with these people. We are in fact offering to them a support system that will be keenly tuned to their needs. On the other hand, in the ineffective area of the chart that Fielder has given us, a leader in this area, if he or she is seen as initiating more structure than is needed by the group, and sometimes often appears as not being genuine or interpersonal in the relationship. So in this particular area, we want to make sure that what we're not doing when we're bringing people into the church is bringing so much overhead into them about do this and do that, and by the way, you have to do this and so forth, and put roadblocks in the way of them reaching their salvation. So as we get along to the upper left quadrant, we have a high relationship as defined in our situational leadership, but we are more of a collaborative workforce at this point in time. So we have a high relationship and we have a low task. And so this is seen by the followers in an effective way as having implicit trust in the people and as being primarily concerned with facilitating their goals and accomplishments. And boy, I tell you, that rings so true when we get into the missions, into the missionary work, in the leaders that are there to be able to bring good disciples into the service of Christ our Lord. On the other hand, if it's an effective way where the people are observing or seeing as the individual leading is primarily interested in harmony, don't want to step on toes, they want to just keep status quo and so forth, and sometimes are unwilling to accomplish a task if it risks disrupting a relationship or losing a good person or their own image. So in this area, this is a collaborative team, and you need to deepen your relationships and also understand that you are in fact building a list or a type of maturity within that particular person as a disciple to continue on to the next stage. Finally, we have on the lower left quadrant here, you'll see that we have a part here that says low relationship and low tasks. Now, in an effective way, our followers, our subordinates, our co-workers, our bosses, if you will, we are seen as appropriately delegating to the subordinates decisions about how to work should be done, and providing little socio-emotional support where little is needed by the group, meaning that once you turn them loose, you don't have to babysit them, you don't have to micromanage them, and that's a term that a lot of people use for as you turn people loose on a new endeavor, and try to resist the overhead necessary to let the people grow and make their mistakes and learn from them. On the other hand, to be ineffective in this particular area, the leaders have seen as providing little structure or socio-emotional support when needed by members of the group. So as they go out, by the time they get to this particular area here, it looks like there's a continued requirement, if you will, for a continued relationship within the organization among peers and their co-workers. And it's so in ineffective areas in this is the people don't have an understanding of where it is that they need to go, and that is a fundamental precept of what it is that we went through these other three stages. So this is how the people look at effective and ineffective leadership styles. As we go into the next slide, we're going to start building a preliminary tri-dimensional leadership model that we're going to use in the coming slides. And here is just our four quadrant as you've seen here. We're going to have effective styles on one end, and these are just a diagram to show you the high relationship and low relationship as far as an effective style. In addition to that, we have some ineffective styles, and here are the same things that we had on the chart before, but what we're trying to do is to make a graphic here that you can relate to show you that this is really a three-dimensional model, a model, where it's right in the middle. You are performing okay, but as you move into the ineffective styles, you're losing ground and you're doing inappropriate things in the four quadrants that you're looking at or the people believe. On the other hand, as you move to the upper right hand style where there's effective styles, you will see that there is the same definition. So our goal here is to have a core understanding of what we want to do in the middle and be in an effective area there. So we have an effective and ineffective tri-dimensional leadership model that we can start for in moving forward. We're going to go ahead and continue on in the next set when we're going to look at this particular effective and ineffective model in a little more detail.